SAP Business Warehouse Modernization isn't about replacing what works. It's about building on trusted foundations to meet today's analytics demands. In this session, you'll learn how to take the smart path to SAP BW Modernization, explore practical transition options, and see how they enable faster, more flexible, and future-ready analytics. A warm welcome, everyone, to today's live expert session. We're thrilled to have you join us. For today's session, I have the pleasure of having here with me Sandy Tran, Senior Product Manager for SAP BDC. Sandy is a product manager specializing in SAP BW Modernization with SAP Business Data Cloud. She focuses on driving product innovation and collaborating with customers to deliver solutions tailored to evolving business needs. With deep expertise in data management and analytics, Sandy helps customers maximize the value of their SAP data. And now, without further ado, over to you, Sandy.
Thank you, Tanya. So also a warm welcome from my end. Thank you for joining the session on how you can actually modernize your BW with BDC, not in a more, or let's say with a less effort and a more smart way to do so. So for that, let me quickly share my screen and start the session. So as Tanya outlined, today I would like to showcase the way or the path forward for BW in BDC. And for that, I would quickly give you an overview of the approach that we're driving with BW modernization. So on the one hand side, we have the lift, shift, and innovate approach, but also deep diving into what it actually means. So I'll show you the lift step, which is quite straightforward actually. Then we have the shift step and then the innovate one. And I will also give you a glimpse onto the roadmap. So what are we planning as of today? What do we have in the roadmap and what's coming next in order for you also to see what SAP is planning to help you during the BW modernization customer journey. So let's quickly start with the lift, shift, and innovate part. So as I've just mentioned, when we talk to customers about BW modernization, the first prerequisite, the first step is always the lift part. It's quite straightforward because it just entails that you need to have your BW on-premise in the private cloud. SAP managed to also reduce TCO in the long term. That's the first step. We usually have a dedicated team and partners who will help you during this step here to lift your BW on-premise to the private cloud. Once this is done, the next step that we're foreseeing is the shift step. So not to mistaken with the lift and shift we have with S4 RISE, we're talking about shift when we talk about BW data products. Why? Because initially, we had BW, we had the classic data warehousing capabilities. Now we're shifting to a different paradigm, which includes data products. With BDC, we have SAP managed data products, we have intelligent applications. And with BW being a core component of BDC, we adhere to this kind of data product economy by driving BW data products forward. So during the shift step, and for this we have introduced a tooling which is called Data Product Generator. Here you're going to leverage this tooling in order to make BW data seamlessly accessible across the BDC environment. Okay, so this is now about how can I get immediate access to my BW data, get valuable insights out of it, and distribute it on the one hand side within DataSphere for analytics use cases. You can build new use cases on top of that in an analytic model, and then preview this one in SAC, in Analytics Cloud, or you can use it to share it with Databricks or any partner solution in order to derive more insights in terms of predictive analytics as an example. Okay, so that is the shift step. How do I enable new use cases with historically available BW data with all its semantics? That would be incorporated in that step. And then the final step, we're talking about Innovate. So Innovate is now all about, you've got already new use cases with BW. We see the advancement of new SAP managed data products. We have intelligent applications. So here, this is the time to explore how can you actually replace your existing BW data flows, either with SAP managed data products being the foundation, or by replacing even a complete end-to-end scenario with a intelligent application instead. So this is what we foresee for the Innovate part. And this is basically the three-step approach on how your BW environment can become more BDC native by eventually also decommissioning the BW by either 2030 or by 2040, depending on your BW, right? So when we talk about the lift step, first of all, for BW 7.5 customers mainly, the easiest way is simply to take your BW as is and lift it to the private cloud. But of course, there's also the optional path to state you could have a BW for conversion, but it is actually not necessary. But for completeness reasons, this is of course still an option for customers who do want to take advantage of BW 4 features that are not available for BW 7.5, or to benefit from a longer mainstream maintenance if required. But ideally, the mainstream maintenance and the features with 7.5 and the journey that we provide are actually already sufficient when customers want to stay with 7.5 instead. Okay, it's just that was just the overview in terms of the lift. And how does the transitioning look like? You see now today you probably have your BW on premise. First step, as I've mentioned, it will be part of BDC by lifting it to the private cloud. And that enables you to leverage the data product generator on the one hand side to shift your historical data, for instance, to the object store of DataSphere, or to enable new use cases using data products, as you can see here. So we're leveraging the object store to do so. Okay, so that's the holistic picture as of today. But I will also showcase the latest feature for the data product generator later on, as well as what we have planned in addition. Okay, so now when we again look at the lift step, we know that customers are on different versions. So first of all, I would like to show you what different path options you have depending on which BW you're on. So we're starting off with any BW NetWeaver that is lower than 7.5, then the goal or the let's say architecture that we are envisioning here would be to upgrade to 7.5 in order to benefit from the data product generator, which has the technical limitations on 7.5 and BW4. If the BW is already on 7.5, then for both cases, we need to check, is it on AnyDB or on HANADB? If it's on AnyDB, then we will require to do an HANA upgrade during the lift process as well. So it's not a two-step approach, but you can do that all at once. And then we need to ensure that the minimum support package is there. If not, you would need to update to the latest one in order to leverage the data product generator. And now coming to BW4, if it's in 1.0 or 2.0, then the recommendation is go to the latest version, which is of today BW4 2023, in order to leverage the data product generator. If you're already on 2021 or 2023, you need to take care either that the minimum support package is supported in your context. For 2023, you're already good to go to leverage the data product generator. Okay, so this is currently now what I've just told you, the lift step. It's more, let's say, an environment change, as well as to check the prerequisites in order to leverage the data product generator as the first but not the latest enabling tooling to make BW data available in BDC, but also as an option to really offload your BW data to the object store of DataSphere. For instance, if you think about historically data, that's something that you can push to the object. So for cost-efficient storage, and then have your BW still in place on the other side while you're working on new use cases in Business Data Cloud. So that's it for the lift. Now let's have a look at the shift step. The shift, as I've mentioned, is more a paradigm shift to data products, to drive this data product economy, and to make data available in a more curated and governed way. So when we talk about shift for Business Data Cloud and BW, here we are leveraging the component DataSphere that was previously a standalone solution. Now it's part of Business Data Cloud. And in here we have the object store, which is basically HANA Data Lake files. And here we're pushing the BW info provider in there to make it available and share it bi-directional to, for instance, SAP Databricks with no replication. So we're doing this in a zero replication manner instead. So on the one hand side, once the data is made available in BDC, in DataSphere, you have the one component creating analytics use cases on top by using analytic models, leveraging the HANA Cloud within DataSphere, or you're doing the machine learning and AI use case. For that one, you could leverage Databricks instead. That's basically the overarching architecture and how we position, for instance, the data product generator in this regard. Now, during this shift, I would like to quickly deep dive into the technical insights on how this data product generator operates. So for this one, I have this slide here. So on the one hand side, you see which info providers do we actually support. So we don't only support BW4 objects and info providers, but also the old ones coming from BW 7.5, including, for instance, InfoCubes or multi-providers. And how it works is that in order to push the data from BW to the object store of DataSphere, of course, you need to have in DataSphere your object store enabled. But in addition to that, you would also require to have the data product generator configured. And then you can simply create so-called subscriptions. I'm going to showcase to you that in a bit, also including the latest features of the data product generator as well. So you're going to select one of the mentioned info providers here. And then as the next step, what will happen underneath is that we're going to push this as a CSV file and then merge it to a Delta table. For the consumer, the only thing you're going to see is the local table file as an indication that it's being stored in the object store and not on HANA. And then there are two use cases, as I've mentioned. You can take your local table file and then create a few on top of that to consume it on SAC side. Or what you can also do still now within the object store is actually to create transformations. So let's say you have already a data set, but you require a more sophisticated calculation. In addition, for that, you can leverage Apache Spark, which is also made available within the object store directly. So in case you do not want to jump to HANA for these transformation, you can just stay in your object store. And then in your customer space, you can then create a new target table, which is also a Delta table, in order to share it as a data product to Databricks or make it available as a data product within the catalog so other users can explore the catalog and see the respective data models or data products that are available in order to consume them. Right. So last year we have introduced the data product generator at the beginning of the year. And the first scope or the first MVP covered actually the push of the data. So now what we have introduced in Q4, so previously prior to Christmas, is that now it also takes the semantics and it's also being more enterprise ready in the sense of you can select different targets. You have also the mass handling option. So there are various features that we have now actually released with the data product generator in order to make it more enterprise ready. And let me show you that actually in the system. So if you already have seen the data product generator, initially it has been released in SAP GUI for 7.5 or in BW4 Cockpit for BW4 HANA. What we have decided to do now in order also to have a centralized modeling pattern is to include the embedded version, so to speak, of data product generator within BW modeling tools. So the requirements here is that you would need to have BW modeling tools 1.27 and then you're good to go. And here we would have just a regular ADSO. You already see here the respective fields. You see also the info objects that have been defined. This is now just for purpose reasons, a simplified info provider in that sense. So now if you have the respective version, you can just jump into or click on the magnifying glass and then you'll search for the scenario generator or the data subscriptions, or there's also a dedicated perspective that will show you data product generator. If you click on that, you'll see the same. So let me enlarge that one for you. Now, the tooling in here, the scenario generator, allows you to do mass handling. So initially, with the previous release, you always had to maintain exactly one info provider per subscription. If you would have, like, let's say, associated info providers, you would have to manually select them in the respective UI and then push it into Datasphere via the subscription. So the first enhancement that we actually did here in order to provide you more flexibility and also better handling of objects is that you can now actually add multiple objects in here that you would like to push. Okay, that's the first thing. So that's the mass handling feature that I was referring to before. Then on the right hand side, you see now different configurations that you can do. So first of all, collection grouping. That's basically to select, depending on the info providers you have, only the ones you require. That's the default one and usually the one that's recommended. But there are also different ones in terms of if there's a data flow on top of that you would like to leverage these EW info providers, you can do that as well. But for showcasing here purposes, we'll just take now the necessary objects. Then we've got the association levels. So that defines if you have, for instance, nested dimensions, how many levels would you like to consider and take to the object store, to Datasphere. This is something that you can configure here. And then we got the target name. So initially with the first scope, you always had to push your BW data in a respective tenant and a respective space. And back then it was N-to-1, meaning only one Datasphere tenant could be configured. Now it's independently of that, so you can have multiple BW systems pushing the data into multiple Datasphere tenants instead. That's really convenient and also something that we have enhanced during the last year as well. Then we have the process chain variant. This is a functionality that we already had before. So if you would like to schedule the fetch of your data, you can do that here by selecting the respective process chain that you need. And then we've got 4 more checkboxes. The first one refers to the target check. Target check basically means Datasphere as the target. And here, this is all about in case there's something wrong with Datasphere, for instance, there's an overload, there's a CPU overload, or there's a memory outage whatsoever, then this check already will indicate to you by the collection of the respective objects that something's wrong with your Datasphere tenant. Please check your Datasphere tenant first before you start all the modeling, all the creation of subscriptions, and then suddenly it doesn't work. So that's like more a safety checkbox in that sense. Then another thing that has been introduced is the option to transport these subscriptions. So before, when you've created the so-called local table files on the object store side, from BW, you could actually not transport these subscriptions that you have created. Now that's possible. So if you would tick that box now, you can also decide on which transport package you would like to add your subscription to. If you don't tick the box, then it's just $temp instead. And then we've got 2 more checkboxes here. The first one is really convenient, which is also enhancement to the MVP that we delivered, is that in case you already have some data subscriptions for a respective info object. So typical example would be master data, right? So technically you require just one, so why would you multiply or replicate it twice or even more? So this checkbox actually considers existing ones, shows them to you in order for you to decide, do I need them? Do I want to reuse them? Or do I want to actually create new subscriptions instead? And then the last one, this is usually ticked per default, is that we would like to hide the non-relevant objects. So for instance, if you have some SIDs, then these will be hidden instead. So let's say you have now everything configured, everything's fine. You would now click on collect. What will happen now is, of course, it gives you an indication. And on the right-hand side, you see now, based on the object you've selected, also the respective info objects. And then depending on the info object definition, you'll also see the respective objects to that as well. And here you would see also the data subscriptions if they're already existent. Whenever there is a data subscription that is not existent, it will be indicated via the virtual. If there's already one, then you will see it here as well. And the status also always shows if it's now being newly created or if it's already existing. And then for every subscription, you always have the same options, actually the same configuration options that you have with the data product generator in BW for Cockpit or in SAP GUI, is to provide the description, or for instance, or more importantly, the different selection and projections. So let's say you have transactional data, but you only require the last 3 years. Your ASO contains 5 years of data, so you can define or filter the data in the selection. As for projection, this rather refers to columns that you might not require for your use case. Here you can also deselect the respective ones. Once you did that, the last step after you have configured all the subscriptions that you require for your use case, you can simply click on generate. And what will happen is the data subscriptions will be created for you. So it will also trigger the creation of local table files on Datasphere side. And you will also be able to see this then in this dedicated tab where you have then the respective data subscription listed. And again, similar to what we have with BW for Cockpit, for example, is that you can easily jump from BW, from modeling tools in that context, to your Datasphere tenant. So when I click on that one, what will happen is it opens, of course, the browser and shows me the local table file that has just been created. So for now, everything you see, most likely the first MVP had already covered, except for the mass handling and the different configuration options. But now the biggest game changers, actually, in comparison to the MVP of the data product generator, is that you see the semantics. So now you just don't get the semantic usage relational data set that you have to maintain afterwards, but instead you'll see here fact. Why? Because the ADSO contains transactional data. But even in addition to that, so let's say you have attributes defined that have a relevant semantic type. So for instance, here, our calendar year, you'll also see the indication for this one that might be relevant in case you do some time dependency use cases as well. But that's not all. You, of course, see the differentiation between attributes and measures. But then in addition, you'll also get the associations. So these are actually the info objects that you have seen on the BW side. These are being transferred. As you can see here, you also see the respective mapping. And that basically shows you that depending on how deep or the associations level you have chosen, you can also drill down in that regard. But that would be the biggest game changer, actually, or the biggest enhancement as of today for the data product generator, to not just push the data from BW to the object store, but really getting the semantics for it, really avoiding for you to rebuild from scratch, but actually getting the data model definition as is, so you can use it immediately for your use cases. So that is something that has just been recently released for the data product generator, but we believe that this will definitely ease the path towards how can you use the data product generator in the future, and how do you actually efficiently reuse your BW data models. Yeah. So that was it for the demo. Let me quickly jump back to our presentation. So that was the demo that I've just shown to you. And now there's an additional part that we would like to enhance during the shift step. Okay. So as I've mentioned before, the shift step entails making BW data available for new use cases, analytics in Datasphere, machine learning and AI in Databricks, or any solution where data products are consumable. So, and now with Databricks, the idea that we had here is that usually when you get now the semantics via the data product generator, as I've showcased to you in that manner, it's not usually consumable by the target. So the idea here now is that we would like to introduce a flattening operator that should ease you in getting the target table that you need for your machine learning use cases in Databricks. So let's say you have, as I've just showcased to you, you have your info provider, you have pushed it into the object store, and now you would like to flatten it before. Flattening basically means initially you had these association structures. Now you would have only one target table that contains all the columns that you require for your use case. So what is the step towards the target table in that sense? So this flattening operator should actually enable you to select the attributes that you need. So you do see the associations. For instance, let's say typical example, you have sales data and you would like to predict the sales data based on your region. So what would be not interesting are the customer IDs, the customer names. So you could deselect these ones and then only select the attributes that you need. So you take, for instance, the country and the region instead. And then you could just click on flattening and then you will have this target table within the object store first, but then you're going to expose this again as a data product via Delta Share to SAP Databricks. So this feature is a enhancement towards the user experience that you don't need to like check, okay, how is my data model definition built? What do I really require? But this flattening operator derives these data model definitions for you in order for you to leverage that as a flattened target table in Databricks afterwards. Okay, so now we have been talking about the Shift Innovate a lot, about how you can leverage the data product generator, how the features have evolved with the data product generator. As a next step, what I would like to target is the Innovate step. And there I would also like to showcase and introduce a new tooling as a, let's say, next tooling to help you to do your BW modernization to Business Data Cloud native. So let me jump into that one. And here we're talking about the query template generator. As the name already implies, now we're tackling the front end. We're tackling the queries. So what do we envision with this tooling here? So in the graphics, you'll see now that we are tackling the front end, the query at the top, and we're creating, respectively, on DataSphere side, corresponding entities. So these entities entail, on the one hand side, of course, the analytic model that contains the analytical insights of your query. Let it be restricted key figures, calculated key figures, any exception aggregation. Then below, you're going to have a fact view. So there we're talking on a relational basis. There you get the respective transactional data. And of course, your fact view is usually associated to dimensions. So analogous on query side, you'll have query, you have the composite provider, potentially then ADSOs, info objects on BW side. So these will be translated to DataSphere. And the idea here is we're talking about query template generator because it should help you to move the query to DataSphere, to BDC. So in that sense, we are on the HANA level to leverage the analytical capabilities of HANA, but we're only retrieving the metadata. So we're not getting the whole data similarly to BW for model transfer, where you have the remote tables, you're virtually accessing your BW, you're depending on BW. But the idea with the query template generator is different in that context. Here, what we envision is that we want this to be decoupled from BW. Hence, the metadata import only. You get the structure, the definition of it into DataSphere. But here comes the twist, let's say. The twist here is actually you will decide what your data foundation will be. So that could be, let's say, previously you already have used the data product generator to push some data into the object store of DataSphere. You have built new use cases, but then you've realized some of the analytics use cases, they are so customized, I would like them to take them as is from BW. So now you already have the basis within DataSphere, within the object store available. The next step is you take the query template generator, you're going to push the metadata, the query metadata into the HANA space of DataSphere. And now question is, how do I fill this up? So one option would be you're leveraging the BW data products, meaning exactly the BW info providers, which your query is actually based on as the basis. Or Another, let's say, more innovative approach in this regard is to explore for suitable SAP managed data products instead. So yes, as of today, that would also imply you will have CDS views. There might be some restructuring that's required, but that is actually one of the core steps to move towards a more clean core approach instead of having heavily customized data models also within BDC. So it gives you also some kind of housekeeping potential to actually leverage the standardized content that we curate for you and that can be used out of the box. So that is the next tooling that is in the queue in order to aid with BW modernization, in order to kind of provide a more clear path towards BW modernization within BDC. And that's how we starting off, let's say, top bottom. We're starting now with the middle layer, which was the data product generator. And then we're moving forward with the query template generator from the top. And of course, eventually we'll also have to tackle the bottom of it. So when we look at it from an holistic view, you're going to have this kind of picture as of today or by end of Q2 when the query template generator will be made available latest. So left-hand side, again, lift step just means lift it to the private cloud, take it as is, do some footprint reduction using the data product generator, push the data into the object store, and then start with new use cases, create data products, and then have queries on top of that using the query template generator, and then combine them, use your data products that were built based on BW data as the basis for your queries. That's of course possible. But of course, what we actually envision in this regard is that customers would slowly adopt to SAP managed data products in the long term. Of course, we understand that as of today, it's likable that you just take the BW data as is, you leverage the data product generator, which is exactly suitable for these use cases. But in the long term, SAP managed data products, intelligent applications should be the answer forward. And to have a, let's say, high level view on that, this is how we would see it as of today, right? So when you work with BW and within BDC, you first of all create your customer data products, the BW data products, as how they are called in here. So it gives you potential to get your BW data into the objects. So first into Business Data Cloud. You get the data products, you can build views on top of that, create some analytical insights via the analytic models, and then shared on one hand side with Databricks or with the Analytics Cloud for instance, to create some stories, visualization of this data. That would be the first step, so to speak. Then, with the advancements of SAP managed data products, of course, the idea is then to really explore what is available and how can it complement my use cases. Where do I see the fit of having historical data as the basis from BW, but then getting the latest data from my ERP system, ideally would be S/4HANA in RISE. And that would be, let's say, the intermediate step that you at your own pace can decide how you gradually move away from BW and focus on a more SAP managed data product centric approach by replacing the respective use cases and the data foundation actually with S/4HANA and the respective SAP managed data products. And then ideally, but of course we acknowledge that this takes time, is that there is no BW in the future anymore. And that would imply anything that comes with the BW somehow needs to be made available within Business Data Cloud, of course, as well as add-ons. For instance, we have BPC, we have SAM-BCS with group reporting or with SAC planning. So there are a lot of, let's say, corresponding features that we have within Business Data Cloud. And the target picture is then really to decommission BW in the long term. And that's, let's say, the high level picture. Now, when we have a closer look into the data model definition, as you can see here, The ideal case is usually on the left-hand side, you have a really complex data flow defined. I acknowledge that this one is really, really simplified because you have a lot of info source in between. You could have a lot of, let's say, different data mart layer, harmonization layer, the staging layer, anything in between. So this is really simplified still. But ideally, what we would foresee is that these BW data flows should be replaced with intelligent applications. So intelligent applications being the answer to an end-to-end data, not data product, but end-to-end product that will help you to accelerate with faster time to insight, with reducing time to model. So this is the ideal scenario where we would see the replacement of BW data flows. But of course, usually they are more customized and you need to do some adjustments, that's for sure. So that's why if you require to keep your BW data flows, which is perfectly fine, then this would be first or as of today, the way to go. Okay. So middle layer is tackled with the data product generator because it's already created. You have the data mart layer where you already know what the data is required for the business, use it as a data product, expose it to any non-SAP solution that's required, or within SAP Business Data Cloud to Databricks to Datasphere instead. And then the top layer concerns then the query that is going to be translated to within the analytic model. Composite provider will be respectively then a few below. But it's, again, your choice. You don't need to fill in the query metadata with the BW data. You can also use SAP managed data products instead. That's why we have introduced actually the concept of only getting the metadata into the, not the object store, but into HANA first for the analytical capabilities, but then object store in terms of data that has been transferred via the data product generator. Okay, so that is, let's say, the overview of the toolings that we're going to introduce or that we already have available. But of course, there's always the scenario that's depicted here. Let's say you would take SAP Managed Data Products, but you actually would like to take anything on top of that, then that is still a valid use case. But of course, we from our end need to help you in tackling anything that comes at the bottom as well, right? So as of today, first of all, the recommendation is actually, let me showcase that to you in that slide. The first step within the transition phase, within the BW modernization journey is actually start with the data product generator. You'll get the semantics. You don't need to rebuild your data models from scratch in Datasphere within BDC. Okay. And then you can also leverage the data product generator to move your historical data to the object store because it's being cost efficiently stored on that end, right? And with the perspective of anyways decommissioning BW in 2030 or in 2040, then it anyways makes sense to get the data out of BW and push it to the object store. So that's the first step. Then what we see as a next step in order to provide you, let's say, a stepwise approach on how you can migrate is the query template generator that comes on top of that, right? So here we're translating the queries for you. We're getting the metadata for you. And then what we will also introduce is to provide a mapping. So mapping basically means, let's say, you started with the data product generator, you got your local table files within the object store. Now, as a next step, you're tackling your analytical workloads. You're trying to move the queries with heavy business logic to Datasphere within Business Data Cloud, which is fine. And we don't want this to be cumbersome for you, right? We want to make it more straightforward. So we're also going to introduce the feature that you can actually map the underlying local table files to the respective query that you have imported. So based on the metadata, we will then be able to see which info object fits to which local table file, which dimension on HANA side would work for the local table file in the object store. So that will also help you actually to move or to migrate your query and keeping it independent on BW side. So with the query template generators, the case is actually you're transferring the metadata, your query is still running fine on BW side. So of course, there's, let's say, some kind of double maintenance, but once you have your query use case finalized within BDC, you don't need it on BW side anymore. So this is really a migration helping tool in that sense, because here we really want to help in moving analytical workloads away from BW to BDC native. But then, as I've mentioned, you always have the option to use SAP Managed Data Products as the basis instead, or derived data products. Let's say you have enhanced them a little bit and then use them as a basis. So that's all also possible in that sense. Okay. So I've talked a lot now about the Innovate part, which incorporates on the one hand side leveraging SAP managed data products, leveraging intelligent applications, but should also incorporate the query template generator as the next tooling that we're going to introduce to help you in coping with the analytical workloads on BW side. So that's why, last slide, a quick glimpse into the roadmap. So at the top, you'll see now what we have delivered in terms of features for the data product generator. So the mass handling I've shown to you, or for instance, the semantics and the associations. But we will have as well as the enhancement of respective composite and multi-providers in terms of the extraction mode. Currently, we only support full load. So here we're also planning to support Delta. And of course, it only works if it's a union and if it's defined, or if the part providers are Delta enabled as well. Then, as you have seen also my demo, the subscription names that's also defining the local table file names on DataSphere side are still quite cryptic. So here we're aiming to provide the option to give an own technical name. So if you have naming conventions as an example, this is where we would like to help in this regard as well. And then we would also envision to support the data product creation out of the box in the scope of business warehouse modernization, and making also these BW entities available in Data Product Studio for you to easier handle data products in general, especially the customer managed one. And below, you already see the items that I've previewed to you. So the flattening operator to get your flattened target table for machine learning use cases. You have the query template generator to get the metadata out of your BW into Datasphere. And lastly, currently what is out of scope for the data product generator is associations, hierarchies. So we do have tags and attributes that's typical for info objects, right? And what's still missing are hierarchies. This is something that we're tackling at the moment, and we're planning also to deliver this by latest end of Q2. So with that being said, that was it in terms of how do we, as of today, propose the smart path towards BW modernization by proposing a stepwise approach, a gradual one. So we do want to avoid a rip and replace. We don't envision any big bang migration with BW, but it's supposed to be efficient and seamless with data product generator as the first tooling that we introduced. Second tooling is now the query template generator. And eventually we're also going to tackle the bottom, meaning the data flows that are defined on BW side as the, let's say, next step in this regard. And with that being said, I'd like to thank you for your attention and heading back to you, Tanya, for questions.
Certainly, we do have a few questions. Perfectly, thank you. Let me pull them up. So let us start at the top. So that was relatively in the beginning, as you can imagine, the first question. So for example, with SAP BW for HANA 2.0, can we not shift to SAP BDC, right? It is mandatory to upgrade to the 2023 version.
So it depends actually. Usually, in general, what we foresee with the shift, or no, not sorry, the lift to the private cloud, we always need to ensure that there's still an end of mainstream maintenance window for that one. So, and especially if you would even lift the data product generator is not usable in that context, right? So you're losing kind of the value that we would like to provide to you. And that's why we put in the prerequisite of having BW 7.5 or BW 4. Yeah, that would be the answer.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Then the next one is BW for HANA 2.0 hosted on Azure Cloud, supported until 2040, or is this does it need to be moved to SAP BDC PCE for extended support?
Okay, for this one, I really need to check the table for the end of mainstream maintenance, but these are also publicly available. But feel free to reach out to me via mail and I can look it up again. Yeah.
Actually, I posted, or a colleague of mine posted the link
Okay,
to
great.
that.
Thank you.
I just wanted to, yeah, for everyone to hear it. There's a link in the chat where you can see all the maintenance topics mentioned. The next one, does the data product generator work on PW 7.5 InfoCube, semantic partition and master data object acting as an info provider?
Yeah, so we do support info cubes as well. Semantic partitioning, I need to check if that's really still in the scope. And yeah, so that's basically the answer. I think it was also in the slide that we support the, let's say, old BW info providers such as InfoCubes, multi-providers, also with the data product generator. Yeah. So maybe to add that. So that's also, let's say, different in comparison to replication flows that you have within the in DataSphere, where you do not or are not able to access InfoCubes actually. So that's also something that is a pro argument for the data product generator because we have a lot of customers comparing these solutions. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. The next one is, why do we need data product generator if we can do the same in DataSphere?
That's actually the answer, right? So you do have the capability with replication flows, definitely. The difference is now that you have seen on the one hand side, we support more info providers, especially the older info providers, then we get more semantics as well as the respective data model definition, right? With replication flows or with any tooling that you have today within DataSphere by creating a remote connection or replicating the data, you'll always get only the respective fields. So that's let's say the big differentiator. And we also support more delta capabilities with data product generator in comparison to the replication flow. And we do not leverage the replication flow. So the data product generator doesn't leverage the replication flow. There we're relying on an OAuth client instead. So it's also different in terms of how you would set up actually the respective architecture. Especially for replication flows, you would also require the DMIS add-on. This is not required with data product generator. So it's also a little bit different in terms of the entry barrier for both solutions. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
So how to combine the local file tables in the new views created in DataSphere?
Yeah. So initially, you're going to have your local table files in the object store. What you're going to do then is simply to share it with the respective HANA space where views are available, and then you can just incorporate that within the view. But ideally, because we also would like to drive this data product economy, is rather to have this local table file being incorporated as a data product, published to the catalog where you or any business user can look for it, request it, and then what will happen is still the same, is that within the HANA space, the data product is going to be installed and the local table file will be made available in that HANA space for the view to be consumed.
That's a great recommendation. Thank you. Now we have a very long question.
Oh.
Following the use case scenario showed, how many times the data is stored? One, advanced data store object in BW Private Cloud Edition. 2, DataSphere object stored. 3, data product delta share, virtual, or is it stored again? Let's start with that, and then I have a
Okay, that's
question in addition.
definitely virtual. So there's only, let's say, a second replication. You have the data in BW. You replicate it once in the object store. Anything that you share after this step is going to be virtual. So there's only, let's say, a second replication within the object store. But as I've already previously mentioned, that's valid because eventually BW will not be there anymore. So the data needs to reside elsewhere. So the first step to replicate it into the object store might sound a little bit ridiculous in terms of, oh, it should be virtual. But given the long-term incentive or the long-term goal that we see here, it's valid to have it stored actually in the object store. But apart from that, anything else is going to be virtual if you consume that local table file.
Thank you so much. So adding to the above question just now, no, there's a typo there. How is it dealt with high volumes and semantic partition plus LSA plus architecture models in BW combined with data tiering functionality in brackets designed for high volume data?
So on the one hand side, maybe there's regarding the data tiering part. So if customers would have the data already in SAP IQ, then the data product generator can actually access this data as well without reloading it back to the info provider, but you can just load it directly into the object store. So the LSA++ architecture is something that we definitely need to tackle, right? As you've seen in the presentation, for now, I'm just talking about the top objects. So for data tiering possibilities as well as for LSA++ architecture, translating it to DataSphere is something that is also on our not roadmap, official roadmap not, but we have this internally discussed and also to provide a solution for these features that we have on BW side, as well as the framework with LSA++ that we had to kind of getting it translated to DataSphere as well. So it's definitely on our list to tackle this.
Great, thank you. Now, can we combine data products generated from BW and data products and SAP data products and create a derived data product?
Yeah, that's possible.
Perfect. That was quick and easy. Then the next one. Can BW for HANA model transfer connection be the best option to copy metadata in DataSphere?
As of today, because I know that we have the query template generator soon, the answer would be no. Why? Or, I mean, it still depends on the use case, but if we're talking about migrating, then the query template generator is the answer. Because with BW for model transfer, when you set up the connection, you're going to remotely access the BW info provider still. So it's not decoupled, but you rely on BW in that context. With the query template generator, it's decoupled because you just get the metadata and then you can use basically the ownership of this model suddenly is in DataSphere and it doesn't rely on BW anymore. So then that would mean you can adjust the query or the analytic model now in DataSphere as you wish. In case you're already sure, okay, this is the query template that I would like to have as now, and I don't rely on changes made on BW side. So BW for model transfer and query template generator do tackle different purposes. One is really to get the whole definition, including a federation manner. The other one is helping you to migrate the query and to remove analytic workloads from BW to DataSphere.
Okay, thank you. Now, there's so many questions. I'm losing control. Can we? Oh, we have that one. Yeah. The question is there a list of SAP standard data packages and intelligent applications?
I would need to look it up actually. I do have seen some list. I'm not sure if they're already publicly available or where they are. So maybe drop me a follow-up mail for this one.
Yeah, I have something in my mind as well, but honestly, I don't remember. That's maybe also a question to my colleague, whether she has a link to a list somewhere in her back of the hand. So please just also post a question in the comments area underneath this video, and we will, the moment we have a link, we'll definitely share it in the comments area underneath this video. And then, okay, how do analytical model handle customer exit scenarios with query generator?
Good question. So for this one, we are planning for the next semester also to not get exit variables translated one by one, because usually you have ABAP coding in there, but to support it better than with the BW for model transfer. So as of today, with the BW for model transfer, if there's anything defined that's not compatible with DataSphere, they're not being transferred. The idea with the create template generator is to still enable the transfer, but then allowing you to kind of define the exit variables within the analytic model, but of course not with ABAP, but with a different expression. That's the current state of planning, but of course always subject to change. But we have definitely in mind that queries or the customer's queries are heavily defined with exit variables. So we do know that we need to provide a solution how you can transfer these exit variables also to DataSphere, definitely.
Perfect, thank you. And then we have, how does the data product generator handle hybrid model solutions? That is, BW for HANA classic model is combined with SAP HANA native model.
Yeah, so for mixed modeling, it's a little bit more complex, to be honest. On the one hand side, let's say you have a composite provider and there is also a HANA view below. Then what we would do on composite provider level is also to materialize the whole view with it. So it's kind of a snapshot of your whole part providers in that sense. And that is, as of today, the solution that we have for hybrid modeling or mixed modeling. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. How does the existing ETL process from S4, ECC, or any other source will work in the new architecture?
Yeah. So as you've seen in the presentation, I have not tackled this one actually, because that would be the next step on our end to focus on. Meaning, the idea now is you should start with the middle layer with the data product generator first, then tackle your analytic workloads with the front end, and then we'll tackle together the bottom in terms of the whole ETL process from your extractors to your respective data source in BW, info source. This is something that we will definitely address, but is not in the scope of today's roadmap.
Thank you so much. Then which type of query variables are supported with the generator?
So as of today, exit variables are not supported, if that might be the actual question, but anything that's supported with the BW for model transfer in terms of variables, these are also supported within the query template generator, and anything that Datasphere learns in the future. So if we're tackling text variables, for instance, then query template generator will always adapt to what functionality is available in Datasphere.
Great, thank you. Now I have had two questions now asking about the presentation. The presentation will be uploaded in the registration area in the landing page for the series. So just go there and we'll post the PDF there. One of the official SAP BDC trainings say that delta sharing is not currently enabled between the object store and DataSphere. Can you please elaborate on that?
Can you repeat the question? Was it, yeah.
One of the official SAP BDC trainings
Mm-hmm.
says that data sharing is not currently enabled between the object store and DataSphere.
So to be honest, now I'm a little bit confused because the object store is part of DataSphere, and we're using Delta Share to expose the objects within the object store of DataSphere to, for instance, Databricks. So from that perspective, it is indeed supported. I would need to have a look at the learning journey to see what is actually meant there or if it's differently conveyed. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Mm.
So one last question, and I would like to say that if questions have not been answered now, please post them in the comments area underneath, and we'll definitely come back to you. So one last one. What will be the future of integrated planning models within BW space? Can it also be generated within the BDC environment?
So usually the official answer in regards to planning is always to leverage SAC planning as the successor of the whole planning concept.
Okay. Maybe one more. Once we move the existing BW PCE to DataSphere, any new data will be loaded in BW objects or through replication tasks in separate tables. Thereafter, a graphical and analytical model is needed on top of both.
Okay, if I get that right. You move the historical data in there and then you delete it from BW, then you get the latest data in there as well. That's usually a different local table file. That means that would need to be merged, yes. Anything that has built on top would still work. Because if there's like an additive changes in terms of columns and so on, these will be considered and then hidden in the models. Of course, if there are, let's say, major changes in terms of deletion, then potentially the model will not work anymore because the columns potentially are missing, if I understood the question correct. Yeah.
That was the last question. We are already over the top of the hour. Sandy, a big thank you for your excellent presentation and a huge thank you for answering all the questions. And also big thanks to all attendees for joining. I hope you got a lot of value from this session, and I look forward to seeing you in our next session. And with this, have a great day, have a great evening, depending on where you are. Bye-bye.
Bye.